So the recording studio is booked for 2 weeks' time. I've just come back from a rehearsal and one song is absolutely kicking me. The changes are defeating me right now. I got 2 weeks to get my act together, and one of the reasons I really want to work on this is John Lewis, the composer of this song, wrote this in tribute to Django Reinhardt when he died. So let's see in 2 weeks if I can really get to grips with this tune, and at the end of the video I'll show you the actual solo being recorded in the studio.
So Django is a bit of an outlier as jazz standards go. Parts of it have a Baroque-like quality, and for starters the soloing changes are not the same as the changes for the tune. Now, Ted Gioa in his fantastic book, which I highly recommend, The Jazz Standards, says of Django that it has an ambitious structure, and he continues to make me feel better about my predicament. As he says, the song is like an obstacle course for soloists. Now, Django features some less common features, which I think is the reason it makes it quite challenging. The first soloing section is in F minor, with each section being 6 bars in length played twice. You then have a bridge in B flat minor for 8 bars, and then a 4-bar tag before this bluesy 8-bar section where the bassist often plays a riff. Now what I found is that from playing lots of standards in the typical 32-bar form with 8 bars for each section, you get just so accustomed to that anything slightly different might throw you at first. Now, also the frequency of the chords here, they're relentless, and if you don't make the first hit, they just keep coming at you again and again and again, and it's hard to get back in the game. Now, I really need to get inside this harmony if I stand any chance of getting this together in time. Firstly, what have I done prior to this? Well, I've already taken care of what should be step 1, and that's learning the chords and the melody, and learning those to the point where I don't need a chart. If I don't know the changes or the tune to be able to accompany someone, then I don't have a reason to complain about not being able to solo over the changes. I've also interpreted those chords, knowing the key centers and how the chords are working, the kind of things I cover in my jazz standard chord lessons and harmony lessons here on YouTube. Now, normally I'd work on varying the melody as my first step into improvisation, but the changes for the soloing are different to the changes for the head. So trying to just vary the melody for improv is slightly less accessible on this one. Coming out of the rehearsal, I went straight for a walk in the woods and I listened to versions of the tune intently, listening for the ways others have interpreted this tune, how they've played over those changes and the form, and for me really to further absorb the movements in those chord changes. I always think that the greatest resource for learning jazz is actually the records. Everything you need to know can be found on the recordings, and John Lewis left many recordings of this wonderful song. And I'm also struck by the Grant Green version and also the Joe Pass version too. More on that later. It's time to get in the car and head home and get to work. My plan of attack works firstly by finding the all-important harmony, the important notes in those chords. Now, I tend to approach improvising using chord tones. I'm not saying I don't use scales, but I do favour using chord tones. For me, they get to the root of the problem more quickly. I sometimes do different things here when I'm working in this sort of stage with a song. Sometimes I just find the chord tones and try and connect them up closely. Sometimes I just look for key harmony like the 3rd and the 7th. But with this one I feel like using 1, 2, 3, 5. So the root, the 2nd or 9th, the 3rd and the 5th of each chord. On dominance I might use a flat 9, flat 2 for more tension, and obviously some chords will have minor thirds, others major, and the odd flat 5 thrown in too. Now I take some time on my instrument just to find these out of time. And then I compose an etude using those notes, and I scribble this down in my manuscript notebook, which is never far from my side when I'm practicing to capture ideas. And in a more legible form, it looked and sounds like this. Now this is not a solo, but the changes are there. You don't need a backing track to hear those chord changes. I like working with limitations, especially when there are so many chords. I actually find it quite liberating. The next day, I stick with the limitations of 1, 2, 3, 5 with some early morning practice. Now, morning is my favourite time of day to practice. Getting practice done then means that nothing can get in the way of it, and I can enjoy the rest of my day knowing I've done my practice. I then returned to the recordings. Now, Grant Green's in particular stood out to me. I'm interested in how he structured his solo and individual ideas here and there too. I notice how Grant Green likes to play motif-based call and response ideas here as the chords descend. Might be something I try and do too. Practice happens, but not for very long, as we take a family day trip to Stonehenge. We also visit this castle. Now, can anyone tell me what early 90s blockbuster used this for a dramatic scene? Today sees zero practice as we head to London to see the Stonehenge exhibition at the British Museum, along with some other typical touristy sites in London. On the journey home, I mentally rehearse the changes to Django, knowing that I'll be way too tired to practice when I get home. Now, I don't want to be in the studio with a pre-prepared solo, but I do want an idea of how I might structure it, like the old rock method of start low and finish high. It's all about how I carry the song along so that it feels like it's going somewhere. Now, I see this B section here, it's like a gift from John Lewis. And the first and third solo sections are really busy. Every chord gets 2 beats, and the B is a point of difference. Every chord gets a whole bar, and it centres around 2 chords. So I feel like that needs a different treatment to the other sections. So I'm thinking I might try and solo with phrases, with more space in this section, and then something busier for the B, and then I might borrow this Grant Green approach of motif kind of call and response bluesy based ideas here. Now this kind of way of thinking is something I really picked up from the great Charlie Christian. He often played phrased ideas with space on the A sections, and then I'd like to say he put his foot on the gas on the B section, playing to the form and taking the listener on a journey with him. If I'm going to hit this B hard, I might want more than the limitations I've imposed on myself so far. Now I'm feeling like the harmonic minor might work well here, or maybe even the Barry Harris minor 6 diminished scale. So I get to work with creating longer lines to create tension, experimenting with different rhythms with triplets and 16th notes too. Now, today is our final rehearsal before the recording. We run every song, we check the arrangements, details such as orders for solos, which songs to record first, finalise travel and other boring details. In that rehearsal, Django goes pretty well. But we know it's got the potential to be tricky in the studio. We are recording it live in the same room, after all. So when I first started playing jazz and jamming with other people, I used to compose solos for jam sessions, so I had something to play. This was to help me develop some confidence, to be honest, but it also gave me a chance to really think about the language of jazz, or what I knew about it then, and what might go into making a good solo. So I'm going to take my rough idea for a structure that I've been thinking about. I'm going to try and compose a solo etude. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. I practiced the 1, 2, 3, 5 and the solo etude, and also attend a local guitar show and managed to avoid buying anything. It's frankly a miracle. Today the weather for once is good, and it's time for one of my favourite things, al fresco practice. It's win-win, enjoy the weather and do some practice. Today has been a really busy day with lessons And I've earmarked some time later in the day to practice, but then my son wants to play football and I can't say no. Eventually, I find someone to take over. They do a better job than me too. I managed to squeeze in some more practice, but I don't want to push things too much. I actually think being relaxed before a recording is more important. It reaches a certain point where you just have to trust your preparation and give yourself a break. Well, someone was a little out with their counting. I didn't have 14 days after all. Today is the first day of the recording. I gather my equipment for the session, my overnight bag, and load up on coffee, and we hit the road. And we get to the studio. We don't tackle Django on the first day though. We record Django on the second day of the recording. Now, being a complex tune, it does take a few goes. As I said earlier, we're recording live, so if one of us messes something up, we have to go right back to the beginning and start again. Now, we could have recorded the album or the track to a click, all adding our parts separately, meaning mistakes could easily be rectified. But we don't think this is a good way to make music. We want it to feel like a band performing live in the room with you. When it comes to my solo, I just play. I don't think about the fact it's being recorded or my video cameras here recording this for you guys. I don't think about the flat fives and so forth. I just play. Here's some bits in take 1 I liked. Here's some bits in take 2 I liked. But here is my solo from the take that will end up on the recording. And you're just hearing here the audio from the rough mix. I'm reasonably happy with this, but in an ideal world I might have had another go at my solo, but I don't want to punch in a solo. We want to do as much of this album live, as I said, with as little overdubs as possible. Now time is ticking and we still have a few things to tie up with a couple songs, and we've got to head off to a jazz festival to play there tonight, so we're getting tired too, so at some point we have to say, that's the best take. Let's go with that one. Now, would I change anything? Well, naturally, I would have started practicing this sooner and not put myself under so much pressure. Sometimes you have to get material together quickly for a gig or a recording session, and I really enjoyed the challenge and goal of having something to work towards. That was fun. Now, did that preparation I did actually help when it came to recording the solo? For sure, but I funny enough think the most useful thing I did was actually just listening to the song verbatim, and especially listening to other people's solos. That was very inspiring and helpful. The 1, 2, 3, 5 and solo etude definitely helped. It just helped me get comfortable where all the important harmony is, and that's just something which is so important to have a good handle on. Now, I feel like overall though, it just helped me go into that studio with a sense of confidence. I didn't worry about it. I was just looking forward to doing it more than anything. Now, most musicians never listen to their own recordings. The rough mixes, however, have just come back. I'm gonna take a listen, and I'll obviously listen to the final mixes once they come in, but after that, probably not again. The thing I really love about playing jazz is that we are always developing our understanding of the songs we play, and our ability to interpret them and create compelling solos over them. Now, that will change over time as we gain new understandings of harmony, and our ability to solo, develops. And this recording of Django is just a moment in time, and there will hopefully be many more gigs where I get to enjoy this challenge again and again and again. But listening to that rough mix, I'm really happy with how the overall songs turned out. After all, my solo is just a small part of that. If you've enjoyed today's video, then I have another video coming up next month in which I document the whole process of planning, recording and releasing an album. So be sure to watch out for that one. When the final mixes are in and the album is out, I will obviously let you guys know where you can stream it and purchase it. Don't forget jazz guitar lessons every Wednesday. Please hit that like button. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. Check out that description. There you'll find information about my Patreon page where I do a deep dive with a jazz standard each month. So if that sounds good, please check that out for more information. Until next time, you take care.